generous donor had offered a free college education to 112 sixth graders who lived in an inner city in Philadelphia. Now, that was 20 years ago. So curiously, we wondered, those sixth graders, who are all adults now, whatever happened to them? Correspondent Kieran Chetry went out to find out and has this update on the Say Yes to Education program.
Been 20 years.
Three friends recall a hot June day back in 1987 when an announcement was made at their sixth grade graduation from Belmont Elementary School in Philadelphia.
That we will guarantee all the youngsters here on this stage a college education. We will pay for every bit of it.
I didn't really know the magnitude of it until after my dad sat me down and explained to me that I have this gift.
George Weiss, a University of Pennsylvania graduate and money manager, founded Say Yes to Education, the program behind the scholarship. What were your ideals at the time?
I think my expectations were a little mismanaged, and then I expected all my kids to get all A's and all go to Penn.
The 112 students were given all the tools imaginable: tutors, after-school programs, field trips, including meeting the first President George Bush.
It just gave me an opportunity to say, hey, the world is bigger than West Philadelphia.
But that wasn't enough for many of the Belmont 112. They were unable to rise above the reality of life in the inner city, dealing with problems like teen pregnancy, drugs, and jail. Dale Mezzacappa covered the story for the past 20 years for the Philadelphia Inquirer.
These were just ordinary kids, and I think throughout, some of them felt that it wasn't fair that they were scrutinized so much.
And George himself wasn't prepared for the tragedy that would befall some of the kids that he considered his own children. 7 were murdered, and 1 killed in a car crash.
There's one young man who I have a picture on my desk here, Walter Brown, and he was a phenomenal young man. Just rips you apart.
Weiss's unbending belief in the Belmont 112 left an indelible impression on the students.
I don't know if he knew what he was getting into, but once he touched us, he couldn't let go.
In fact, he paid constant visits to their West Philadelphia neighborhood. He set up a 1-800 number so they could call any time, and that phone still rings today. 20 of them eventually earned a bachelor's degree, including Alan Alexander, who today works in social service. Jelena Evans received a degree in film and media arts. And Damian Caldwell is among 14 students who attended vocational school. Today, he's a sound engineer as well as a pastor.
Go forward, brave and bold.
But the students say they ultimately gained much more than an education.
Many of us remain friends over the years, and as adults have really had to lean on those relationships.
The Belmont 112 recently had a reunion celebrating their achievements, and of course, George Weiss.
I really feel I'm the benefactor. I think I've been given a huge reward, and I think anybody that's been associated with these kids has really become better human beings.
Kieran Chetry, New York.
Wow. Joining me now is the gentleman you just saw in the report, George Weiss, the founder of the Say Yes to Education program. Mr. Weiss, let me just start with a bit of disclosure here. I've covered news in Philadelphia for a number of years, and I was at that graduation ceremony all those years ago. I'm feeling a bit old just about now, so it was just so good to see all of those students all grown up now. You said in that report that your expectations for all of this were mismanaged. What did you mean by that?
What's kind of interesting is that when you go into a program like this, you really don't know what to expect. So I had the same expectations that I really had on my own children.
Yeah, well, the Belmont 112, we just saw some of them have just done very, very well. In your opinion, looking back now, do you believe that they wouldn't have been as successful if you hadn't given them a leg up all those years ago?
Well, you really don't like to think of yourself in that light. All I can tell you, Art, is that these are great young men and women, And to do it again, I would do it in a New York second.
Yeah. Again, this was a national story, and so many people followed it and hailed you as a hero for having the foresight and the resources to be able to do this. Let's talk about the tragedy just for a moment. It was mentioned that 7 of these kids had been murdered over the years, and I would imagine that when each of those phone calls came to you, that had to make you just feel sick as a parent would have felt.
Absolutely. I delivered 5 of those 6 eulogies, and it made me a better person, but it was very, very sad. Something that you had no expectation for, and you always look to the positive side and seeing what you can do to help and make their lives better. And then you run into these tragedies, and it breaks your heart because they had so much going for them. And at one point you said, you'd like to adopt them all, bring them to your home, and bring them to the suburbs, but that's not real world.
Yeah, I understand that. You've got that 800 number, and you say the phone rings all the time. When's the last time you've heard from one of them?
Yesterday. Some
Really?
young lady called me from Norfolk, Virginia, just to tell me she loved me.
How about that?
Made my day.
Now, I know that had to make your day. All of that said, and it is 20 years later, would you consider doing it again?
Well, the interesting thing, Art, is we've had programs in Cambridge, Hartford, and we started a program 2 years ago in Harlem where we take 400 kids and their families. It's a very holistic approach. So the answer is absolutely yes.
And what can others do? Have you gotten it to the point now, since you are doing it in other places, so that there is a model in place? Let's say, for example, someone in Massachusetts wants to do it. Someone in Richmond, Virginia wants to do this kind of program. Could they follow your roadmap and make this happen if they've got the resources to do it?
Absolutely. One of the key things to say yes is we always partner with a fine educational program, whether it's Penn in Philadelphia, whether it's Lesley University in Cambridge, whether it's the University of Hartford in Hartford, or Columbia Teachers College. It's very important, but yes, it is a model that has worked. As you said, it has 20 years of experience. We've changed it, we've looked at it, we've modified it, and yes, it is a model that's replicable.
And in terms of the number of students, I would imagine that can be adjusted according to any particular school system, right? Doesn't have to be 112 students.
Does not.
Okay. Any last words you want to say to all of this? I know that you're a very humble man, and again, this story has been in the spotlight for a long time, but it is 20 years later. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with as to what we can all take away from this?
Well, the message that I always send to the kids is we'll make a difference in your lives, and turn around and make a difference in somebody else's lives. And the Belmont kids are following that model. And if we all work together, we can make this world a better place.
Yeah, well, just one correction, the Belmont adults, because again, 20 years ago, and boy, they have grown up quite well, haven't they? Thank you very much, George Weiss, for being an inspiration in the community and for all of us.
Thank you.
Okay.